Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Leadership Void podcast. I'm Enrique with my co host, Vince, to bring you the best in our veteran military spouse and first responder community. And Vince will introduce today's guest.
Thanks, Enrique. We'll keep on strong with Women's History Month. We have Christine Rabaja here with us today, an executive leadership coach, founder of the Untold Want Coaching Inc., all the way here from Orlando, Florida. Christine, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about you.
Good day to you all and to the listeners out there as well. And it's an honor to be with you, gentlemen. Thank you both for your service and for those that are listening as well. So, about myself, quite frankly, all I offer to you is what you need to know about me is I am all about freedom and authenticity. And I believe the best way to have both is to galvanize your sense of self.
Now, that's very powerful because sense of self is one thing that eludes a lot of folks. And I love that you are in the leadership coaching space. So, having said that, tell us a little bit about your coaching practice.
Well, I appreciate that segue. That's really helpful because it's exactly the foundation of my practice as a leadership and executive coach is to help folks galvanize their sense of self, because I think we all can agree, for those of us who want to continue to evolve, it is about continuing to evolve that sense of self, to galvanize that sense of self, which is what makes my job particularly varied and challenging and exciting all at the same time. What I thought might be useful, gentlemen, with your permission, is a lot of times folks confuse coaching with other modalities. So I thought that might be useful for your listeners as well. Often folks are familiar with mentoring or consulting, where someone who is familiar with a particular industry, they have experience and knowledge in a particular organization, or a particular skill set of a job. When those folks are brought in as consultants or mentors, it is because they are relying on their experience, their perspective, their knowledge, that they will prescribe, they will advise, they will direct, they will recommend that people take certain actions, make certain decisions. And that is very useful for some context for some of these people to help understand what's out in front of them, what are some of the unknowns are helpful. That mentor is able to reveal what some of those unknowns are so people feel like they have a better understanding of what's out in front of them and feel better prepared. As a leadership and executive coach, my advantage is that I don't have that level of experience in a specific industry or role. That means I get to be curious. That means I get to poke around and offer new perspectives, new ways of seeing or thinking about different things. And by me asking those questions to poke around, I don't have to advise. I don't have to recommend. I don't have to direct people, because quite frankly, we all have enough people telling us what we should do. We don't need another person telling us what to do. What I do instead is, because I've offered you a new perspective, a new way of seeing and thinking about your current situation, it enables you to come up with your best solution. So the nuance is subtle, and they are used very effectively in parallel. Someone who has a mentor who is familiar with that organization can give you recommendations. If you want to be a VP, if you want to move into the C-suite, they can give you recommendations. Bringing those recommendations in to a coaching conversation, you and I then get to determine what are your best actions you are willing and wanting to take for you to actually achieve that goal to become a VP or in the C-suite, for example. So they're used very nicely in parallel. But as a coach, it's not my role to tell you what you should do. It's my role to help you discover your best answers.
No, absolutely. That distinction about the modalities is great. You know, one thing I was told real quick was like, you know, a mentor uh answers your questions and a coach questions your answers, right?
Yes.
So that was one thing that was shared with me way back, and I thought it was powerful how you kind of like peeled it back. So thank you for sharing that. And as we all served in the military, we give back to our community. Either love to know about what you do to give back in the community, or talk about the lessons or challenges about entrepreneurship.
Yeah, because they're certainly related. And that's a great point, Vince. I'm glad that very succinct to be able to distinguish between mentoring and coaching. I'm going to have to steal that with your permission. So, one of the ways that I continue to give back to our community is, in fact, that's how I started in executive and leadership coaching in the first place, was quite frankly by accident. When I retired after 20 years in 2016, I was still trying to figure out, what do I want to do when I grow up, like often many of us do. And for those colleagues and friends that were retiring behind me, instead of like a consultant would do, you should do this, you should look into this, you should do this, I recommend this, I instead was asking the coaching questions from a natural place of, well, what works for other people might not work for you. So are you looking for something based off of compensation or location? Are you looking for profit or nonprofit? Are you looking like I was asking those kinds of coaching type questions that allowed people to find their own best answer as they transitioned out of service and back to the first civilian division, first Civ Div. That was how I was invited into the coaching environment, eventually got my own certification. I continue, even to this day, to work with those service members who feel stuck. I know what it is that I want to do, but I feel like I have to go do this other thing. Or I have all these folks who are telling me what I should do, but it doesn't feel right for me and my family. But I don't know how to get unstuck. Those are our people. Those are the folks that I continue to love working with because, as I said earlier, we all have enough people telling us what we should do. So I love being that little spark of hope that I'm not going to tell you what you should do. I'm going to help you find your answer. And often those are the folks that I love working with because they're open-minded and they want to adapt and they want to be able to own their own decisions to take care of themselves and their families in a way that they've been doing while they were serving. So those are still my folks. Those are still the clientele that I actively seek to work with because there's plenty of us out there that are wanting to help those that are coming behind to move into first Civ Div. We're here. We're here to help you make it a little easier, a little smoother. That transition's tough for everybody. So how can we make it a little easier for folks coming behind us?
That's a great thing to strive for because we all know what that feels like. And I'm so glad that you're in that business to help them as well. So, what's on the horizon for your coaching practice?
Yeah, that's a great question, Enrique. So thank you for that as well, because the future is wide open these days. I've actually just this past year broadened my practice to include, as it turns out, global clients in the civilian sector in its totality. As it turns out, that same transitional moment when you take off the uniform for the last time and you're seeing it hanging up in the closet, realizing you're not going to wear that anymore, who am I? There are a lot of civilian folks that are in a similar liminal transitional moment. Think a college graduate moving into the workforce for the first time. Someone who's in the workforce who was the subject matter expert or individual contributor and is being asked to step into a manager role for the first time. And they don't know, we've been there before where we don't, it's on the job training. Go figure it out. You're now the manager. You're now. It's one of those things. And it's these transitional moments. You're mid-manager wanting to be a director. You're wanting to move into the VP level. You're wanting to move in the upper echelons. It's a new role. It's a new identity that we are trying to put on. And people are looking for that kind of support, looking for what are the ways that I can bridge, whether it's a performance gap, a knowledge gap, a skills gap that will enable them to step from the initial role or identity into that new role or identity. That's where a coach comes in to be able to help bridge you being able to have a successful transition in that role as well. So that's where my future role in these next few months, hopefully into years, is expanding into who are those clients who are struggling in those transitional moments and being able to support them as well, just as much as I do with the service members.
Well, kudos to you, and not only going global, but also having a different repertoire of clienteles in your arsenal. So thank you, Christine, for that. Let's transition and talk a little bit about leadership. Love to hear, from the steak to the sizzle now, right? Sharpening your skill sets. What do you do to aids you to thrive in your professional life?
Thank you for the question, Vince, because it's one of those that I was thinking about earlier of what are ways that each of us, back to the point from the beginning that we were talking about, we all are trying to strive to do just a little bit better every day. And what are those things that we could be doing personally, professionally, in our community that we're just doing a little bit better each day? And as a coach, there are a couple of different ways that I'm striving to enhance and be able to serve my clients even better, is through these kind of networking, being able to talk to you two and really talk about best practices, lessons learned, what are some advice that, oh, I hadn't thought about that, Vince, Enrique, thank you so much. I'm writing that down. I'm going to try that on for size. For me as a coach, my desire is to continue to work with mentor coaches. I have 2 coaches right now that I'm working with that are allowing me to elevate my coaching behaviors from a professional level into a masterful level. And for me, by moving my skill sets from a professional level into a masterful level, allows my clients to be able to have those insights, those changes of perspectives a little bit faster, a little bit easier, a little more actionable. And for me, that's the important piece of what I'm doing to be a little bit better every day, is so I can continue to pay it forward for those folks that I'm helping, so that they too can be serving those that they have influence with a little bit faster, a little bit easier for them as well. So I don't know if that answers your questions. You're welcome to ask me again.
No, that's wonderful. And self-development is obviously one of the things that leaders need to focus on as a coach, even more, because now you're actually helping others get to their expected end. And talking about helping others, what advice did you receive when you was growing up, either in the military or even in your coaching practice, that you would like to pass on to an emerging leader today?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? And how do you pick and choose some of these moments, right? I don't know that it was a saying per se, Enrique. What I would love to share that still has a profound effect on me was when I was a young captain and I was coming to the end of my initial enlistment, so to speak, as an officer, our initial time as well, equivalent. And I was stuck, quite frankly, in terms of, do I stay or do I go? We all sort of face that at some point or many points in our military careers where we get stuck, wondering, have I done what I wanted to do? Is this all there is, or is there more out there that I'm not aware of? Do I stay? Do I go? At that time, I was the quality control officer at Parris Island, South Carolina. Bring a smile to some of our faces for those of your listeners out there. And I felt like I had done everything that I wanted to do up to that point. And I was starting to think about my transition back to the civilian sector, working on a master's degree, MBA in that time frame. And it turns out that the commanding general had heard through the grapevine, through my boss, the colonel, that I was going to get out, that I was going to leave at the end of my time. And it was going to coincide me leaving at Parris Island at that time. He said, you and I need to have a kneecap to kneecap conversation, one-on-one, just mano y mano, so to speak. And he point blank asked me, why are you leaving? You have so much to give still inside our Marine Corps. Why are you leaving? And it was the first time that I felt someone actually wanted to hear what I wanted to say. And I thought, well, yeah, he's the commanding general, but if he's going to ask me, I have nothing to lose because I'm potentially out of here. So I'm going to tell him like it is. I'm going to tell him honestly, quite frankly. And that was the response I gave, was I felt like I had done everything that I came to do. It was time to move on to the next challenge. And it was less about what the aftermath was, which obviously, since I just said I retired at 20 years, so obviously he convinced me to stay in. So it's less about that I want your readers to walk away with. What I want your readers to walk away with is there's a TED Talk. I don't remember what it's titled. We could probably look it up and you could probably put it in the listener notes, but there's one that talks about the lollipop moments in our life. That there are these moments in our life that we have someone who touches us in a way, changes our life trajectory in a way that oftentimes that person doesn't even know. They go on with their life, they go on, we may never see them again, we may not even know them, but they have touched us, they have changed us, they have changed our trajectory. And it's a lollipop moment. That for me was my lollipop moment. Because for me, it was the first time in my military career that I felt seen. I felt heard. I felt understood. And I had been at that time almost 8 years. And for me, that became the source of who I wanted to be as an officer in the Marine Corps, and even today as a coach. The most flattering compliment I have ever received was when I have clients who say, this is the first time I have ever truly felt seen, heard, and understood. My Marines who felt seen, heard, and understood by me became my foundation because of that one person who made me understand what that really can do to transform people's lives. So for your folks listening, what are those lollipop moments that have changed your life? And can you reach out to those folks and thank them and explain to them how they transformed your life? And similarly, what are those moments that you can take just that moment to make someone feel seen, heard, and understood can transform lives.
You know, that's goosebumps right there, Christine. You know, definitely transform lives indeed. I
Right?
love that. Love that. Love that. Also, on that note, you know, that profound opportunity of that lollipop moment. Love to also hear about a memorable leadership aha moment you've had either in the Marine Corps or in your journey in life.
Oh gosh, let me think about one that would be really relevant and helpful for your listeners. So I guess there's maybe, again, not even a moment that I would bring forth, but a perspective that I offer your listeners to consider. Throughout my military career, I was never a commanding officer. I was never an executive officer. I was never in the traditional leadership role. But you all and I and your listeners, I think we can all agree that in the military, we are always leading. Even if you are simply leading yourself, we're always leading. With the authority, with the title, or without the authority and the title, we're always leading. And for me, that was part of my transition out of captain into major. And when I retired as a lieutenant colonel, was that perspective that I continue to hold, which was I can still influence, because leadership is influence. I follow John Maxwell's teachings, if you will. I agree with him 100%. Leadership is about influence, and you can influence without the authority, without the title, without all of these other things that, whether in the military or in the civilian sector, whether you're the boss, the manager, the supervisor in a role, we all have the ability to influence. It's a choice to wield that level of influence that you have, given your perspective, given your experience, given all of those things that you bring that are valuable to your current situation. But for me, it's about remembering that perspective of leadership is about influence, and you have within you what you need to be able to influence. Back to the point around, can you change lives? Can you just make it a little bit easier, a little bit better for those around you? And I invite everybody to take that on.
1000%. You know, invite indeed. Talk about invite. How do we invite Christina to get a hold of you, right? So, folks, now's her chance to tell you how you can get a hold of Christine or her coaching business. So, Christine, how do they get a hold of you or your coaching business?
No, I would absolutely love to hear from any of your listeners. And even if I'm not the right coach for them, or even if it's not coaching that they're necessarily even looking for, they just want to reach out and connect, because it is about the community and how can we help support each other. There's two different ways that I offer. Certainly LinkedIn is always the easiest way, since folks are on LinkedIn. And obviously Enrique will be happy to provide you with that link in the show notes as well. The other is just looking for me on my website, ChristineRabaja.com. You're welcome to look for that as well. It will also provide you a way to be able to connect with me as well. But those are the two ways that I find are probably the easiest way for folks to find me.
Well, folks, we will have that as part of the show notes and video so you can get a hold of Christine and her coaching practice. It's been a joy to have you with us today. And if you want to reach out to the Leadership Void podcast, the Leadership Void at gmail.com is where you'll send that correspondence. If you'd like to hear a special speaker or a leadership topic covered, you'll do it by those means.
Yes, and here we are wrapping another week of Women's History Month with this great individual, great leader. Thank you, Christine, for being here. And let's also thank our sponsors, Triple Nickel, A Hero for Kids, and FAVOB. Again, have a great day and many blessings.